It is finally time for my review of the Dell Inspiron 16 Plus that I've been using as my main unit over the past few weeks. I wanted to test this laptop to get another go with a 16-inch 16:10 aspect ratio laptop after testing the Lenovo IdeaPad 5 Pro 16-inch during summer. I feel like the Dell Inspiron 16 has a lot of positive things to it, and since my main unit for a very long time used to be the Dell Inspiron 15, I felt like upgrading to a Dell Inspiron 16 Plus was a pretty natural road to go. This is a very upgradable machine, it has great specification and it comes in at an amazing price. These are things that I really care about, so I think because of that it is a very interesting unit. I paid around 1200 euros for this unit, which is the i7 with the RTX 3050 graphics, 16 GB of RAM and a 1 TB SSD. The way I've been using this laptop has mainly been as an office laptop, but also a little bit of video editing, consuming content both with the screen and plugged into external monitors. And then I've been using it a tiny bit on the go when I've been working in my home in Stockholm. I'm W2Best, I make in-depth gear reviews and tutorials, and if you like this video after watching it, I would be super happy if you want to put a like on the video and maybe also subscribe to this channel. That gives me a ton of motivation to bring out new content moving forward. Let's first try out if the laptop can be opened with one hand. That is not a super easy task to complete, but it works with a little bit of shaking. When we reach this state, we also see that there is no Windows Hello facial recognition login. The login is performed with the fingerprint reader, which is located in the power button. I would say the fingerprint reader is working really well and is very fast compared to previous PC laptops I've used. Let's talk a bit more about the quality feel of the laptop. When closed up, I think that the quality feel is actually really good of this unit. The only thing that bugs me a little bit is that it has a little bit of sharp edges around the corner here. So as you can see here on the side, it doesn't sit completely flush with the chassis against the back side there. This is something that is common on cheaper laptops, but it's still something that can be a little bit annoying, and it's not very sharp, it's just not completely flush against there. Except this, I think the build quality is very fine when you are on the outside like this here. There is definitely a little bit of screen flex going on here, but it's not terrible by any means, and probably not something that would disturb me at daily use. The bonus with the laptop not being that easy to open with one hand is that it's also relatively sturdy when you're touching the screen like that. This means that the unit can probably be used very well when you are in a train or a plane, for example. As you can see, there is also a little bit of keyboard flex. And I'm pushing down quite hard on the keyboard here, and you can see that it's definitely giving me a little bit of flex. This is, however, not something that I have been noticing at daily use, so I wouldn't say that it's terrible by any means, but just not an as good quality feel as some more premium laptops. The palm rest though has a really good quality feel to it, and I think it has a perfect size with fitting this pretty large trackpad, as well as giving me ample space for resting my palms on. The laptop is all metal except the bezels around the screen here, which are plastic. This is not something strange, it is usually the way it is, but sometimes they can be made out of glass to account for a bit of a more premium feel for the laptop. I think the bezels are giving it a really nice quality feel because it's a very slim bezel both in the bottom as well as on the sides and on the top, but with the webcam located in the right place here. The chassis is a bit of a fingerprint magnet though. It is picking up quite a bit of fingerprint, and the weird thing is that the most prone part to fingerprints is the trackpad. So as soon as I'm putting my fingers on there, and I would say that my hands are relatively clean, it is getting some pretty large and noticeable fingerprints on the trackpad. And this is the place on the laptop where you use your fingers the most. So this is the one that should definitely not get fingerprints when you are using it. This is also quite hard to get rid of. So if you are disturbed by fingerprints on chassis, I think These are also pretty hard to get rid of, so if you are disturbed with fingerprints on your computer, this is probably not the laptop for you because they are gonna be there on the trackpad. This is the maximum angle you can fold down the screen, so there is no 180 degree happening here. It is definitely enough for my use cases, but I know some people want to put it on their knees when sitting on a bed, for example, and then find this not to be enough of an angle for their laptops. Let's have a closer look at the port selection. Here on the right hand side you can see there is a 3.5mm headphone microphone combo jack. We have a USB-A port, together with a full-size SD card reader. The SD card doesn't protrude when it is put in there, but the transfer speeds are really bad at around 23-24 megabytes per second. Then we have some of the round ventilation grills here, which helps with airflow coming out of the machine, something that we're gonna test out a little bit more in depth later on. On the left hand side you can see we have the barrel connector for power, a proprietary cable that I don't think is the ideal solution, but it is nonetheless what we have to stick with here. However, you have the Thunderbolt port on the left hand side as well, which can be used for charging. Together with that we have some more of these round ventilation grills. We have an HDMI port, a full-size one, together with another USB-A port. Then there is that Thunderbolt 4 port, which has been working really well with my different connectivities that I am using it for. I think the port setup is great, and the only things I want to complain about are for sure the slow speed of the SD card reader and the let out of a second USB-C port. That is something that I would normally make quite a lot of use of, so it's a bit annoying to not have it here in this machine. One of the most common use cases for me personally is to use the laptop together with external monitors, and this is a mobile solution that requires the monitor to be able to get both monitor signal as well as power from the USB-C port of the laptop. This is something that is working perfectly fine with the Dell Inspiron 16 Plus, and I've been using it quite a lot with this kind of setup, and I like the way that it is working. However, the fact that it only has one USB-C Thunderbolt port makes it harder to use multiple monitor setups over USB-C, which is something that I would normally do. So this is not something that is making this laptop better in my eyes. I truly wish that there was another Thunderbolt port in it. The laptop has also been working perfectly fine together with my triple monitor setup in my office. This is where I'm using it over USB-C to a Dell 25-inch monitor and then another monitor via DisplayPort via daisy chaining, and that gives me the triple monitor setup. Let's talk a little bit more about the screen of the laptop. This is a really nice screen and I truly appreciated using this screen. It is a 3K matte monitor with a resolution of 3072 x 1920 pixels, which means it is a 16:10 aspect ratio. This is a 60 Hz monitor, so it doesn't have any higher refresh rate to allow for really smooth visuals or gaming with a higher FPS than 60 and pushing that out to the screen. It is a 300 nit display, which is the lower brightness limit for me, but with the kind of matte display that this is, I've actually seen this as enough in this laptop, and I've never been disturbed with too low brightness in the screen. However, if you want to use it in direct sunlight or very bright conditions, I think you want to step up to 350 or 400 nits and not stay at the 300 nit level. The colors of this laptop are very good at around 100% sRGB. And there is not that much backlight bleed, although there is a little bit, but nothing that disturbs me at any form of daily use. Let's have a listen for coil whine and idle fan noise. Right now there are no fans running at all, however there is a little bit of coil whine. There's a bit of humming, or not whining, but a little bit of a buzzing noise from the components on the inside, and it's really not loud. You have to lean very close in to be able to hear it. My Inspiron 15 has the same kind of buzzing noise from the components when I lean in closely to it, so I think this is probably something that is a problem with several Dell models, if not all of them. If you are incredibly disturbed by sounds coming from your laptop, this is something that I would maybe stay away from, but for me it's really not been a problem. The temperature of the chassis at this idle state is around 25 degrees, here at the hottest point up top. The temperature on the WASD keys is around 23 degrees in this idle state. The temperature of the CPU in this idle state is around 25 to 28 degrees on the 8 cores of the CPU. The laptop weighs in at 2046 grams. Together with the provided 130 watt proprietary charger and power cable, it weighs in at 2562 grams. Which I still think is a pretty solid weight for such a powerful 16-inch unit as this is. Let's talk a bit about the battery life, because the battery life of this guy is supposedly quite good. This has a 86 watt-hour battery, which is one of the larger battery sizes I have ever used in a laptop. I did my battery test, and the strange thing here is that when I was using it at full charge and just unplugged the charger, it was at 99% battery life and estimating a time remaining of 3 hours and 39 minutes. A short while after that, it was at 98% and then showed a time remaining of 2 hours and 13 minutes. This is something I would definitely say was a bit worrying. But the good thing is that I put the screen to medium brightness and I was streaming video for 1 hour over Wi-Fi. Right after I got back to the laptop after exactly 60 minutes of streaming, the battery was at 91% and an estimated time remaining of 8 hours and 3 minutes. When pausing the video and waiting for a few minutes, the battery life was at 90% with an estimated time remaining of 10 hours. So I think at mixed use, this laptop can definitely deliver a full day battery life, which is something that I appreciate a lot, and I know a lot of you guys really appreciate as well. These are the speakers of the Dell Inspiron 16 Plus. The last one I was testing out more in depth was the Lenovo IdeaPad 5 Pro, the 16-inch version, and this one I felt had quite a bit of flaws, and I ended up returning it because of these flaws. I'm not yet sure if this guy will live up to some kind of 16-inch hype, but my first impressions has in general been really good with using the device. The speakers are downward firing and are placed here in this relatively weird shape that I've never seen before in any other laptop. I think it's a pity that they are using downward firing speakers in this laptop, because it means that you need to place it on a hard surface like I have done now for it to be as good audio quality as possible. However, the audio quality is relatively good. When I am now used to using the audio in the MacBook Pro M1 Pro, I think the audio here is not at all as good. But I would say that it's relatively similar audio quality to, for example, the Lenovo Yoga Slim 7 Pro. If you're gonna, for example, watch a movie, you would want to use an external speaker. But if you are in a video call, or if you're using this just to watch video clips or listen to a little bit of music, this is going to be fine. The speakers are not going to fill out a whole room. You will need an external speaker for that to happen. Let's talk a bit more about the trackpad here, because it is really a dividing thing in this laptop. I've been using this laptop for about 4 weeks now, and during this whole time I think the trackpad has been one of the great positives of the laptop. It is fairly responsive, it is big enough but not too big to be in the way when you're typing on the keyboard, and I overall really just like the feeling of the trackpad. However, I have had a ton of people commenting saying that these laptops, the Dell Inspiron 16 Pluses, have failing trackpads after some time. and that they get stuttering, that they get non-responsive trackpads, and just in general a really not well working trackpad. Most of the time I'm using my laptop with an external mouse, so I will not be putting that much strain on the trackpad, and maybe that will lead to some longevity more than some other users, but keep in mind that a lot of people have been seeing trackpad failures here. The trackpad is not flexing a lot, and if anything I would say that it's maybe a little bit on the stiff side when it comes to the hard clicks here. I am most of the time using the soft clicks, and I think that the soft click, both the single one and the double one, are working really well with this trackpad. That also goes for gestures, which I think work perfectly fine. This is a typing test of the keyboard of the Dell Inspiron 16 Plus. The keyboard of this laptop is one of the big cons for me, and that's a little bit sad because it has a lot of good qualities to it. For example, I really appreciate the layout. It has a decent travel distance to it, and also it has that really nice numerical keypad. However, the keys are a bit too stiff to activate. And this is something that over this month that I've used the laptop, I just can't really get over it. I want the keys to get activated relatively easy so that I don't have to have a feeling of pushing down. I use mechanical keyboards a lot, and I really want the activation force to be there, but not that I feel like I have to push down the key. And when I have to do that, I just feel like it's putting a lot of strain on my wrists, and that makes it very uncomfortable to be able to type in high speeds. This keyboard is really not my favorite experience, and I think if I would use this as my main device, I would have to plug it into an external keyboard for it to be a comfortable office experience. The Wi-Fi and Bluetooth connections of this laptop has been working completely fine over this month that I have been using it. I've been connecting it to the Wi-Fi of my phone, the Wi-Fi at home, and the Wi-Fi in the office regularly without any issues. And I've been using it together with my wireless mouse over Bluetooth and not have had any issues with that either. The overall Windows experience though is a little bit of a mixed use case, because this is the first laptop ever that I'm using together with Windows 11. This one comes with Windows 11 Pro, and I still would say that I'm not completely comfortable using Windows 11 over Windows 10. I will come back with a bit of a comparison video at a later point, but I can just say that there are a bunch of things that I find quite hard to get used to with Windows 11. And I have truly enjoyed Windows 10. Every part of Windows 10 I think has improved my workflow over Mac OS that I was using before. But now that I've been using one Mac OS computer and one Windows 11 computer, I think that Mac OS is definitely my preferred choice when picking between that and Windows 11. This is a very upgradable laptop, which is something that I will get more in depth on in a later video. This has both an extra SSD slot for putting a second SSD in, another upgradable SSD slot, which is where the main SSD is hosted, and it also has 2 RAM slots for upgrading the RAM. The specification says that 32 GB is the maximum RAM size, but I will be trying to upgrade this to 64 GB down the road and see if that is working. I really appreciate the fact that this is such an upgradable machine. I think that makes it a proper pro unit, as compared to a few units that are called pro but are not really that pro as they claim. The SSD in this unit is an NVMe PC711 NVMe SK Hynix 1 TB. The SSD of the laptop is really fast with a read speed of 3486 MB per second and a write speed of 3249 MB per second. The name of the monitor is AU Optronics B160QAN. The monitor ID is AUO9F91. It is a 16-inch LCD with a 16:10 aspect ratio and a 227 pixel per inch. In Novabench, the laptop scores 3,484 points, with a CPU score of 1,977 points, a RAM score of 284, a GPU score of 954, and a disk score of 269. This says that it was run with the internal GPU, but I can confirm that it was running on the RTX 3050 when it was running the GPU test here. Heaven Benchmark with Full HD and a high preset was scoring 3,308 points and an average FPS of 131. Minimum FPS was 9.3 and maximum FPS was 275.4. I think these are some really solid GPU scores, and the good thing was that the fans was not going crazy during the GPU test as well. Cinebench R23 is running a 10-minute loop of stress testing the CPU, and this is an 8-core CPU with a clock speed of 2.31 GHz. It's the i7-11800H CPU. And I know that it can deliver quite good performance, so let's see what it is pulling off here and how cool the laptop is able to keep itself during the testing. After about a minute and a half of running the test, the fans are starting to spin up a bit. It is not really loud, but you definitely hear the fans spinning. The temperature at the hottest area is now at around 32 degrees. And at the WASD keys it is at 29 degrees. After half of the test we still have the fans running at the same kind of level as before, which is not super loud but audible. At the hottest part the laptop is now at 32 degrees still. So that is pretty good that it stays at the same kind of heat on the chassis here. On the WASD keys we have around 31 degrees right now. So a little bit hotter, but not that much. We are getting into the final part of the test, and I have to say that the fans were audible all the time, but really not loud and not high pitched at all. So that's something that is really good to see. Although I'm getting used to having a no fan experience like I do on the MacBook Pro with the M1 Pro chip. Now at the end of this test we have a chassis temperature of about 34 degrees at the hottest point, and at the WASD keys we have a chassis temperature of about 32 degrees. The laptop scores a pretty good 9,914 points while being plugged into power and running the Cinebench R23 10-minute loop. This is fairly good for being an Intel CPU, and this is also my first i7 CPU that I'm using with Intel, so seeing as high scores as this is actually really nice. And now just a few seconds after the test is wrapping up, it is silencing down so that there is almost no fan noise anymore, which is also good to see. Yeah, the 11800H 8-core 16-thread clocked at 231 GHz is definitely performing well in this laptop. Let's try out a bit of gaming with the Inspiron 16 Plus. And let's see what settings the game have selected for us here when opening it up. We are now running in native resolution, that is 3K, and we have ultra settings with a render scale of 83%. We are not limiting the FPS to see how high we can go with these settings. We are at a very stable 100 FPS here in this game. And I cannot really hear the fans when I'm running the audio from the game. So that's pretty solid performance, because remember we're playing 3K ultra settings here. 3050 really seems to be a capable graphics card for this kind of game like Overwatch is. When playing the game here, we have a temperature at the hottest point of the chassis at around 42 degrees. And at the WASD keys, we are at around 35-36 degrees. And they are definitely not hot to the touch. A very, very playable experience in Overwatch, staying at around 90 to 100 FPS all of the time. I like to see this, and I will try out a few more games in a different video. So what do I think after these first few weeks of using the Dell Inspiron 16 Plus? I think that this is a pretty good laptop, and most of the things in it I enjoy quite a lot. But since I started using the MacBook Pro 14 with the M1 Pro chip, it has a really hard time to beat that laptop down. Before I started using the MacBook Pro, I think that this could have easily become one of my main units and to be used for most of my use cases. But right now it's having a very hard time to beat the MacBook Pro, and I will use it occasionally, keep using it, and one of the main things I'm looking forward to is when I can upgrade this guy to put an extra SSD in the extra SSD slot and also upgrade it to 64GB RAM. Because then this will be a true powerhouse of a laptop, more powerful than anything I've had before. And then maybe that will shift the situation a little bit and make this guy able to beat down the Mac if the performance is even better than the Mac performance. I will definitely keep this laptop though, so it is going nowhere. I will be keeping it. I will be reviewing Windows 11 down the road. I will be comparing this guy to the previous generation, comparing it to the MacBook Pro, and a lot of other videos that are coming up. What do you think? Would you get a Dell Inspiron 16 Plus at this price level where it comes in around 1200 euros or so? If you're looking at the Inspiron 16 Plus and comparing it to the XPS, I really think that this guy is worth a consideration. If you are comparing it to a MacBook Pro 16, the price level of this guy is just so much better that I also really think that it is worth a consideration. I think one of the most popular 16-inch units that this will be compared to is the Lenovo IdeaPad 5 Pro 16-inch, but also the Lenovo ThinkBook 16P. The IdeaPad I was testing out previously, and based off of my testing of that unit and my testing of this unit, I would definitely go for the Dell. The ThinkBook 16P I haven't tested out yet, so I couldn't tell you how that one compares to the Inspiron 16 Plus. Those are my 5 cents about this laptop, and I hope that you enjoyed this content, and I will see you in the next video. Have a nice day. Bye bye.